Welcome back. Today, we are going to learn one of the most important books ever written about money, business, trade, and success. The Wealth of Nations. In this video, you will understand how nations become rich, how businesses grow, why trade matters, and how money changes the world, all explained in very simple English for beginners. Chapter 1. Who was Adam Smith and why the wealth of nations changed the world? Many people today talk about money, business, success, jobs, trade, and the economy. But long before modern companies, online business, banks, and global trade became powerful, one man tried to understand a very important question. Why do some nations become rich while others remain poor? That man was Adam Smith. He was born in Scotland in 1723. He was not a businessman or a king. He was a thinker, teacher, and philosopher. From a young age, Adam Smith loved learning and observing the world around him. He watched how people worked. He studied trade and business. He thought deeply about human behavior, money, labor, and society. At that time, many countries believed wealth meant one thing only: gold and silver. Governments thought the more gold a country collected, the richer and stronger it became. Because of this belief, many governments controlled trade very strictly. They created heavy rules. They limited business freedom. They tried to control imports and exports. And they believed that keeping money inside the country was the secret to success. But Adam Smith saw something different. He realized that real wealth does not come only from gold. Real wealth comes from work, production, skills, trade, creativity, and human effort. This was a revolutionary idea. In 1776, he published his famous book, The Wealth of Nations. This book became one of the most important books ever written about economics and business. Even today, hundreds of years later, people still study his ideas. Why? Because Adam Smith explained something very powerful. A country becomes rich when ordinary people are free to work, create, buy, sell, and improve their lives. This idea changed how many nations thought about business and the economy. Before Adam Smith, many rulers believed governments should control almost everything. But Adam Smith believed people themselves create wealth through their daily work. For example, a farmer grows food, a baker makes bread, a teacher teaches students, a worker builds houses, a shopkeeper sells products. When millions of people work productively together, the whole country becomes stronger. This sounds simple today, but at that time, it was a very powerful new idea. Adam Smith also believed competition was important. When businesses compete, they try to improve products, lower prices, and give better service. This helps customers and improves society. He believed freedom in business could help economies grow naturally. Another famous idea from Adam Smith is called the invisible hand. This idea means that when people work for their own success, they often help society at the same time. For example, a businessman wants to earn money, but to earn money, he must create something useful that people want to buy. So while helping himself, he also helps customers, workers, and the economy. Adam Smith believed this natural system could create growth without too much government control. This idea became one of the foundations of modern capitalism. But Adam Smith was not simply worshiping money. He also cared deeply about morality and human behavior. He understood that greed alone is dangerous. He believed societies need justice, honesty, rules, education, and fairness too. He wanted balance. Another important thing Adam Smith explained was the power of specialization. He noticed that when workers focus on one specific task, productivity increases greatly. For example, imagine one person trying to make an entire product alone. It takes a long time, but if different workers each focus on one small task, work becomes much faster and more efficient. This idea later helped factories, industries, and businesses become more productive around the world. Adam Smith also understood the importance of free trade. At that time, many countries heavily restricted trade with other nations. But Adam Smith believed trade benefits everyone. He explained that countries should focus on producing things they are good at and trade with others. This creates more efficiency and wealth for everyone involved. Today, global trade still follows many of these ideas. Another reason this book became so important is because Adam Smith wrote about ordinary people. He did not only focus on kings and governments, he focused on workers, businesses, markets, labor, and daily economic life. This was different from many thinkers before him. He believed the strength of a nation depends greatly on the productivity of its people, not just on the power of rulers. This way of thinking changed economics forever. Today, many countries use systems influenced by Adam Smith's ideas. Free markets, competition, trade, private businesses, and economic freedom. Of course, modern economies are much more complicated now. Some people agree strongly with Adam Smith's ideas. Others believe governments should play a bigger role. But almost everyone agrees that the wealth of nations change the world permanently. Another reason this book remains powerful is because its ideas still connect to daily life. Even today, we see business competition, global trade, entrepreneurship, prices changing through supply and demand, and people trying to improve their financial lives. All these things connect to ideas Adam Smith discussed hundreds of years ago. But perhaps the most important lesson from Adam Smith is this: a nation becomes strong when people are able to create value through work, skill, production, and innovation. Wealth is not magic. It is created slowly through human effort, organization, productivity, and cooperation. This idea transformed how the modern world thinks about economics. And that is why The Wealth of Nations became one of the most influential books in human history. Chapter 2: The Power of Division of Labor. One of the most famous and important ideas in The Wealth of Nations is something called division of labor. At first, this idea sounds simple, but according to Adam Smith, this one idea can completely change productivity, business growth, and the wealth of a nation. So, what does division of labor mean? It means dividing work into smaller tasks so different people can focus on different jobs. Instead of one person doing everything alone, many workers each do one specific task. Adam Smith believed this system makes work faster, easier, and more productive. To explain this idea, he gave a famous example. A pin factory. A pin is a very small metal object, but making one requires many steps. The wire must be stretched, cut, sharpened, shaped, packed. If one worker tried to make every pin alone, production would be very slow. Maybe one person could make only a few pins per day. But Adam Smith noticed something amazing. When different workers focused on one small task each, production increased dramatically. One worker stretched the wire, another cut it, another sharpened it, another packed the pins. Because every worker repeated the same task again and again, they became faster and more skilled. As a result, The factory produced thousands of pins every day instead of only a few. This simple example showed a very powerful truth. Specialization increases productivity, and higher productivity creates more wealth. This idea later became one of the foundations of modern factories and industries. Even today, businesses around the world use division of labor. Think about a restaurant. One person cooks, one takes orders, one cleans tables, one manages money. If one person tried doing every job alone, service would become very slow. But when tasks are divided, work becomes smoother and more efficient. The same thing happens in huge companies. In a smartphone company, thousands of people work on different parts. Some design software, some build hardware, some create advertisements, some handle customer service. Together, they produce products much faster and more effectively. Adam Smith believed this system was one reason some countries became wealthier than others. Countries with productive workers and organized industries could create more goods and services, and more production creates economic growth. Another reason division of labor is powerful is because repetition improves skill. When workers repeat one task many times, they become experts at it. For example, imagine a person learning to cut wood. The first day may feel difficult, but after repeating the same task for months or years, speed and skill improve naturally. This happens in almost every profession. Practice creates mastery. Adam Smith understood this deeply. Another important benefit of division of labor is saving time. If workers constantly switch between many different tasks, productivity decreases. But focusing on one specific task saves energy and improves efficiency. For example, imagine a worker building chairs. If the worker constantly changes between cutting wood, painting, designing, and packaging, work becomes slower. But if each person focuses on one step, production becomes faster. This system later became extremely important during the Industrial Revolution. Factories became larger, machines improved, mass production increased, and many countries became economically stronger because of increased productivity. But Adam Smith also understood there were some dangers. He noticed that repeating one small task forever could become boring and mentally exhausting for workers. For example, if a worker does the exact same movement every day for many years, life may become repetitive. So while division of labor increases productivity, it can also reduce creativity in some jobs. This is still an important discussion today. Modern factories and companies still face this balance between efficiency and worker satisfaction. Another powerful lesson from Adam Smith's idea is this: teamwork creates greater results than isolated effort. One person alone can only do so much. But organized cooperation creates massive production. This is true not only in factories but in society itself. When people cooperate through trade, business, transportation, education, and communication, nations become stronger. Adam Smith believed human cooperation through specialization was one of the greatest engines of economic growth. Another important thing Adam Smith explained is that division of labor grows through markets. In small villages, people often do many different jobs because there are not enough customers. But in large cities with bigger markets, workers can specialize more. For example, in a small village, one person may fix shoes, bags, and clothes together. But in a large city, one worker may focus only on shoes because there are enough customers. This creates higher skill and better productivity. So larger markets create more specialization. and more specialization creates more wealth. This idea helped explain why trade and growing economies are connected. Another interesting thing is how division of labor affects daily life today. Almost everything we use comes from thousands of specialized workers around the world. Think about a simple smartphone. Different workers mine metals. Others create chips. Others design software. Others assemble parts. Others transport products. Millions of people cooperate indirectly to create one object. Adam Smith understood this powerful economic connection long before modern technology existed. He saw that human productivity increases greatly when work is organized efficiently. Another important lesson from this chapter is that productivity matters deeply for national wealth. A country with skilled, productive workers can produce more goods, services, and innovations, and this creates higher living standards over time. Adam Smith believed that economic growth comes not from gold alone, but from productive human labor. This was one of the revolutionary ideas of the wealth of nations. Even today, countries still focus heavily on education, specialization, technology, and worker productivity, because these things increase economic strength. But Adam Smith's lesson was not only about factories. It was about understanding a deeper truth. Human cooperation and specialization can transform society. When people focus on their strengths and work together efficiently, incredible progress becomes possible. That is why division of labor became one of the most famous ideas in economics. And even hundreds of years later, the modern world still operates using this powerful principle every single day. Chapter 3. How Money and Trade Changed Human Society. Long ago, before modern money existed, people exchanged goods directly with each other. This system is called barter. For example, a farmer with extra rice might trade with a fisherman who had extra fish. A person making clothes might exchange them for vegetables or tools. At first, this system sounds simple, but barter had many problems. Imagine you have bread and want shoes. You must find someone who needs bread and also has shoes. This was difficult. Sometimes people could not find the right trade partner. Sometimes goods lost value quickly. Food could rot. Animals could die. Products could break. Trade was slow and complicated. As societies grew larger, people needed a better system. That is where money changed everything. Money made trade easier, faster, and more organized. Instead of directly exchanging products, people could sell goods for money and then use that money to buy whatever they needed. This simple change transformed economies around the world. Money became a common tool that everyone trusted. A farmer could sell crops for money, then use the money to buy clothes, tools, or food. A worker could earn wages and spend them later. Trade became much smoother. This helped businesses grow. It also helped cities and markets expand. Before money, economies were smaller and slower. But with money, economic activity increased rapidly. Another important thing about money is that it stores value. Instead of carrying many products everywhere, people could save money safely for future use. This encouraged planning and investment. People could build businesses, hire workers, and grow industries. Trade between different regions also became easier. A merchant could travel to another city, buy products, and sell them somewhere else for profit. Over time, trade connected villages, cities, and entire nations. Roads improved. Ships traveled farther. Markets expanded. The world slowly became more connected through economic exchange. Another important idea explained in The Wealth of Nations is that trade benefits both sides. Many people in history believed trade was like war. They thought if one side became rich, the other side must become poor. But this book explains something different. Trade can help both people at the same time. For example, imagine one country grows excellent coffee. Another country produces high-quality clothing. Instead of trying to make everything alone, both countries can trade. One sends coffee, the other sends clothes. Both sides benefit. This creates more efficiency and better products. The same thing happens in daily life too. A baker focuses on bread. A carpenter focuses on furniture. A teacher focuses on education. Instead of doing every job themselves, people specialize and trade with others. This system creates stronger economies and higher productivity. Another powerful lesson from this chapter is that human beings naturally like exchanging and trading. People constantly look for ways to improve their situation. A worker searches for better opportunities. A business searches for customers. A trader searches for profit. This natural exchange helps economies grow. Another important thing discussed is markets. Markets are places where buyers and sellers meet. Prices change depending on supply and demand. For example, if many people want a product but there is very little supply, prices usually rise. But if there is too much supply and fewer buyers, prices often fall. This natural movement helps economies organize themselves. When prices rise, businesses often produce more. When prices fall, businesses may reduce production. This system helps resources move where they are most needed. Another important point is that trade encourages innovation. When businesses compete, they try to improve products and services. They search for better methods, faster production, lower prices, higher quality. Competition pushes improvement. This benefits customers and helps economies grow stronger. Think about modern technology today. Companies constantly compete to create better phones, better cars, faster computers, and new inventions. This competitive environment often leads to progress. Another important idea from this chapter is that wealth is not only about money itself. Real wealth comes from what money can buy: food, homes, clothing, transportation, education, healthcare, and opportunities. A country may have gold and silver, but if ordinary people suffer in poverty, true prosperity does not exist. This was a very important shift in thinking. The book explained that productive economies improve living standards for society. Another powerful lesson is that economic freedom helps trade grow. When people can buy, sell, create businesses, and exchange goods more freely, markets usually become larger and more productive. Too many unnecessary restrictions can slow economic growth. However, complete freedom without rules can also create problems. That is why societies need laws, fairness, and stability too. Another interesting point is how trade connects people emotionally and socially. A product made in one country may be used by someone thousands of miles away. Workers, businesses, transport systems, and customers all become connected indirectly. Trade creates cooperation between strangers. This was one of the reasons economies expanded so rapidly over time. Another important thing discussed is the role of trust. Money only works when people trust it. Trade only works when agreements are respected. Businesses grow when customers believe products are reliable. Without trust, economic systems become weak. That is why honesty and stable institutions matter greatly for long-term prosperity. Another powerful lesson from this chapter is that economic growth happens gradually. Nations do not become rich overnight. Growth usually comes from better trade, productive workers, stable systems, specialization, investment, and cooperation over many years. This process takes patience. Another important idea is that economic systems affect ordinary daily life. Prices affect families. Jobs affect communities. Trade affects opportunities. Economics is not only about governments or banks. It is about how people live, work, buy, sell, and survive. That is why these ideas became so influential. The book helped people understand that economies are built from millions of daily human actions. Workers earning wages, farmers growing crops, merchants trading goods, businesses serving customers. Together, these actions shape the wealth of nations. And this understanding changed how much of the modern world thinks about money, trade, and economic growth even today. Chapter 4: The Invisible Hand and Self-Interest. One of the most famous ideas is called the invisible hand. This idea explains something very important. When people work to improve their own lives, they often help society at the same time. For example, a baker makes bread to earn money. A farmer grows crops to support a family. A business owner wants profit. These people work mainly for personal success. But while helping themselves, they also help others by creating food, jobs, products, and services. This is the idea of the invisible hand. Another important lesson is competition. When businesses compete, they try to improve quality, lower prices, and give better service. Customers benefit because they get more choices and better products. Competition also encourages innovation. Companies search for better ideas, faster production, and new inventions. Another major point is that markets can organize many activities naturally. Prices change depending on supply and demand. If people want more of something, businesses usually produce more of it. If demand falls, production often decreases. This natural system helps economies adjust. However, the book does not say greed is always good. Societies still need laws, fairness, honesty, and justice. Without rules, powerful groups may exploit workers or destroy competition. The chapter teaches that healthy economies need both economic freedom and responsible systems. This idea became one of the foundations of modern capitalism and still influences economies around the world today. Chapter 5: Why Free Trade Helps Nations Grow. Another important idea is free trade. Long ago, many governments heavily controlled trade. They blocked foreign products and created high taxes because they believed wealth came mainly from keeping money inside the country. But this book explains something different. Trade can benefit both sides. Every country has different strengths. Some countries are better at farming. Some are better at technology or manufacturing. Instead of trying to produce everything alone, countries can focus on what they do best and trade with others. For example, one country may grow coffee very well. Another may build excellent cars. By trading, both countries benefit. Another important lesson is specialization. When countries focus on industries where they are strong, workers become more skilled and production improves. Trade also creates larger markets. Businesses can sell products to more people around the world. This creates more jobs, more investment, and more economic growth. Competition from international trade also helps improve quality and lower prices. Customers receive better products and more choices. Another important point is that trade connects countries together. Products, Technology, ideas, and resources move across the world through trade. Even today, the global economy depends heavily on international exchange. The chapter teaches that nations usually become stronger through trade, cooperation, productivity, and economic freedom rather than isolation. Chapter 6. Wages, Profit, and Prices. In the wealth of nations, an important idea is understanding why things cost money and how economies decide prices. Every product we buy includes many costs. For example, the price of bread may include worker wages, flour costs, transportation, electricity, rent, and business profit. One important lesson is wages. Workers receive wages for their labor and time. People use wages to buy food, clothes, housing, and other daily needs. Wages often depend on skill level, demand for workers, and economic conditions. Another important idea is profit. Businesses want profit because profit helps companies survive and grow. Without profit, businesses may close. Profit also encourages people to start businesses, invest money, and create new products. Another major lesson is supply and demand. If many people want a product, prices may rise. If too much supply exists and demand becomes low, prices may fall. This movement helps markets adjust naturally. Competition also affects prices. When many businesses compete, they often try to lower prices and improve quality. Customers benefit from this competition. The chapter teaches that wages, profit, labor, supply, and demand all work together to shape the economy and influence daily life. Chapter 7. The Rise of Capital and Business Growth. Another major idea in the wealth of nations is capital. Capital means saved money, tools, machines, buildings, or resources used to create more wealth. Businesses need capital to grow. For example, a factory may need machines, a shop may need products to sell, a farmer may need better equipment. Without investment, growth becomes difficult. Another important lesson is saving and investing. When people save money and invest it into businesses, technology, or production, economies often grow stronger. Investment helps create more jobs, more products, and higher productivity. Another major point is productivity. Better tools and machines help workers produce more efficiently. For example, a worker using modern equipment can often produce much more than a worker using simple hand tools. This increases economic growth. The chapter also explains that successful businesses usually grow slowly over time through investment, reinvestment, and continuous improvement. Profit allows businesses to expand further. They may hire more workers, buy better technology, or open new locations. Another important lesson is risk. Business owners and investors take risks when they spend money hoping future success will come. Some businesses succeed greatly, others fail. The chapter teaches that capital, investment, productivity, and long-term planning are very important for building strong economies and successful businesses. Chapter 8. Why Governments Matter in the Economy. Many people think the wealth of nations only supports business freedom and markets. But the book also explains something very important. Governments still play an important role in society. The book does not say governments should disappear completely. Instead, it explains that healthy economies need balance. Too much control can hurt growth, but no rules at all can also create serious problems. One major responsibility of government is protecting society. Without safety and stability, businesses and trade cannot grow properly. Imagine a country with constant violence, corruption, or chaos. People may fear opening businesses. Investors may avoid risking money. Trade becomes difficult. Economic growth usually needs security and stability. Another important role of government is creating laws and justice. Markets only work properly when rules are respected. For example, businesses must honor agreements. Property rights must be protected. Fraud and theft must be punished. Without trust in legal systems, economic activity becomes weak. Another major point discussed is public infrastructure. Some projects are too large or expensive for private individuals alone. For example, roads, bridges, ports, schools. These systems help society and economic growth together. Transportation allows trade to move faster. Education improves worker skills. Public systems support productivity. Another important lesson from this chapter is taxation. Governments need money to operate. Taxes help pay for security, courts, infrastructure, and public services. But the book argues taxes should be fair and reasonable. Very heavy taxes may discourage investment and business activity. Another important point is that governments should avoid unnecessary interference in markets. Sometimes rulers create too many restrictions or protect powerful groups unfairly. This can reduce competition and innovation. Healthy economies often need a balance between economic freedom and responsible government systems. Another major lesson from this chapter is that strong societies depend on both productive markets and stable institutions. Business alone cannot solve every social problem. Governments still help create order, fairness, and public stability. That is why economics and politics are closely connected. A stable society usually creates stronger economic growth over time. Chapter 9. Why some nations become rich and others stay poor. One of the biggest questions in the wealth of nations is this: why are some countries wealthy while others struggle with poverty? The book explains that national wealth does not happen by accident. Rich nations usually develop through productive labor, trade, investment, education, and efficient systems. Countries become stronger when people can work freely, build businesses, create products, and exchange goods. Another important idea is productivity. A productive nation can create more goods and services efficiently. This increases income, trade, and living standards. For example, countries with strong industries, transportation systems, education, and skilled workers often produce more wealth. Another major lesson is specialization. When workers and businesses focus on areas where they are skilled, productivity increases greatly. This helps economies grow faster. Trade also plays a huge role. Countries connected to large markets often gain more opportunities for growth. Trade allows nations to exchange resources, technology, and products efficiently. Another important point discussed is investment. Poor countries often struggle because they lack capital, infrastructure, education, or stable systems. Without investment, businesses cannot grow effectively. Another major factor is political stability. Frequent conflict, corruption, or weak institutions often damage economic growth. Businesses need stability to invest confidently. Workers need opportunities. Markets need trust. Another powerful lesson from this chapter is that wealth usually grows slowly over long periods. Strong economies are built step by step through hard work, organization, innovation, and cooperation. There is rarely a quick shortcut to national prosperity. Another important point is that education matters greatly. Skilled workers improve productivity and innovation. Countries investing in human knowledge often become more competitive economically. Another major lesson is that economic systems affect ordinary people deeply. National wealth is not only about government power. True prosperity means ordinary citizens have jobs, opportunities, food, housing, education, and improving living standards. That is why productive economies matter so much for society. This chapter helped people understand that wealth creation depends heavily on human effort, efficient systems, trade, and long-term development. Chapter 10. The Lasting Impact of the Wealth of Nations. When this book was published in 1776, it changed how many people understood economics forever. Before these ideas became popular, many governments believed wealth came mainly from gold, strict control, and heavy restrictions. But this book introduced a different vision. It explained that wealth grows through productive labor, trade, specialization, investment, and economic freedom. These ideas later influenced modern capitalism and global economic systems. Another important reason the book became so famous is because it focused on ordinary economic life. It discussed workers, businesses, markets, wages, trade, and production. The book explained that millions of daily human actions shape economies: farmers growing food, workers earning wages, businesses competing, customers buying products. Together, these activities create national wealth. Another powerful lesson from the book is the importance of productivity. Countries become stronger when people can produce efficiently, innovate, and cooperate through markets. Specialization and division of labor became central ideas in modern industry. Factories, companies, and global businesses still use these principles today. Another lasting impact is the idea of competition. Competition often pushes businesses to improve quality, lower prices, and create innovation. This became one of the foundations of modern market economies. The book also strongly influenced ideas about free trade. Today, international trade connects countries around the world through technology, transportation, manufacturing, food, and services. Modern globalization still reflects many ideas discussed in this book centuries ago. Another important impact is how economics became a serious field of study. Before this period, economics was less organized as an academic subject. This book helped create modern economic thinking. Universities, governments, businesses, and economists still study many of these ideas today. Another powerful lesson from the final chapter is balance. Economic freedom can create growth and innovation. But societies also need justice, stability, education, infrastructure, and fairness. Strong economies usually require both productive markets and responsible institutions. Another important point is that the book remains relevant because human behavior has not changed greatly. People still work for opportunity, compete for success, trade goods, invest money, and search for better lives. Modern technology changed the world dramatically, but many economic principles remain similar. Another major lesson from this book is that wealth creation depends heavily on human cooperation. Millions of strangers cooperate indirectly every day through markets, businesses, trade networks, transportation, and communication systems. This cooperation creates modern economies. Finally, one of the biggest messages of the Wealth of Nations is this: nations become stronger when people are productive, free to innovate, connected through trade, and supported by stable systems. Wealth is not magic. It is built slowly through work, organization, investment, productivity, and human effort over time. That is why this book became one of the most influential economic books in human history and continues shaping the modern world even today.